Each year, our universities educate hundreds of thousands of students, create highly qualified members of the workforce, and have an economic impact in the billions. I'm Diane Trees. A look at the economics of higher education on the next Metro Center Outlook.
This program is made possible by funding from the UCF Metro Center, where government leaders, business executives, and academic experts come together to discuss major issues facing the state of Florida.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Metro Center Outlook. I'm Diane Trees, Director of the UCF Metro Center and your host for Metro Center Outlook. Florida's universities have a combined economic impact of $80 billion. But like many industries across the nation, our state university system has been challenged to do more with less. Joining me today to discuss the economics of higher education is Sean Snaith, a national economic forecaster and the director of UCF's Institute for Economic Competitiveness. But first, with higher education in a national state of flux, what lies ahead for Florida's universities?
Recently, educators from across Central Florida gathered at Church Street Station in downtown Orlando to discuss the current state of Florida's higher education system.
The future is extraordinary. Virtual education is key to moving forward. There are a lot of public and private alternatives there.
You might also be interested to know that Florida is first in being under $50,000. There's only one other state that even gives a bachelor's degree for under $50,000, and there are only 5 other states that give a bachelor's degree for under $55,000. We are doing very well. We are the most cost-effective system in the country.
But the reality is the state's not going to be able to fund everything we need to do. They don't now. So we've got to look at new revenue sources, particularly where our facilities are concerned and the kinds of programs we want to put in.
Funding is currently provided by a number of sources, but a changing economy requires a changing revenue stream.
I'm not interested in having the Florida House pump more money into the existing structure. I think it's an old system that needs to be reformed. Things have to change with time, and government is usually the last thing that reforms because we don't have to. Because we get funded based on how many students show up, not based on what the product we're producing on the outside.
No matter how the education system is funded, these experts agree that the key to Florida's future depends on it.
It's not about getting a job immediately after you graduate. It's about what it's like for you to be launched into life and what kind of success do you have as a result of being an educated person. By midlife, you ask the question, how much is that person making? That's the real question if you're talking about an authentic bachelor's degree.
If we're looking at fields that we really need for students to go into and we want to incentivize them, what better way than to tie some type of, you need to work in the state of Florida, you need to contribute back to the state that has helped to give you your education. And to me, that's the piece that's been missing all along as we've looked at Bright Futures and looked at just handing these students an education, and then after they graduate, they can go anywhere, and many of them go out of state.
And I also want to add a cautionary note to allow the universities and colleges to see what works for their students. Not all students in population bases are the same, and you may find some differences. But if you try to create rules at the top and give a top-down solution, you're inviting trouble. You're inviting one person's solution to be imposed on everybody.
Sean, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Universities, what role do they play with the state economy?
Well, I think they play multiple roles as far as the state economy is concerned. I mean, obviously, institutes of higher education play a larger societal role in sort of advancing knowledge, advancing our understanding about ourselves. But they're also working to train future leaders, for future business people, future employees in the state's economy. So the labor force aspect of universities is very important as well. But universities also have a research component, and so that research may produce in and of itself new products, new discoveries that bolster the economy, that create jobs. But even when you don't have some tangible output from the research process, you're taking students and you're giving them the critical skills and the methodology and the understanding so that when they leave the university, they can apply that to their chosen careers.
The scientific method of thinking.
That's right.
Well, with the model that we have, is the Florida State University system a successful economic model, or does it depend on your frame of reference?
I guess yeah, how do you define successful economic model? You know, is our university system the top state university system in the country? I think probably by most measures the answer is no. You know, it's playing a role, and there are success stories, and if you look at each of the individual universities across the state, they have their strengths, they have their weaknesses, and you know, so it's not a failure. Is it the best it could be? Is it a complete unadulterated success? I think the answer is no. You can always get better.
Right.
Yeah, well,
right.
You know, you're never going to have a perfect university.
The aspects you mentioned, the social aspect, the research. Do you think we're meeting those particularly?
I think we could probably do better. I think we're meeting them at some level. You know, I think the bar could be higher. I think we could be doing better on a lot of different fronts. But you know, it is, as you noted in the opening, a challenging environment in which to make these types of changes that I think could be implemented and could improve the state system.
Well, Florida's cut funding for public universities by 40% in the last 5 years. So should universities be looking for new revenue streams, or should the state be looking to reevaluate perhaps the way higher ed has been funded?
Yes, would be my short answer. Well, I think universities already are adapting to the change, looking for other sources of research, looking for partnerships and ways to bring funding in aside from monies that are coming from the state government. You know, could the state be doing better? Yes, absolutely. But you know, we've come through an extremely difficult recession that has impacted revenues, not just here in Florida, but around the country. And so you're seeing this play itself out again and again around the nation. States are cutting funding. Universities are trying to make that up, and part of the way they're making it up has been through tuition hikes. So there's a direct correlation between the shrinking public support for universities and the rate of tuition increase.
Well, I think that the economics, demographics, and even technological trends have sort of come together and are forcing higher ed to make some big changes. How should universities approach those types of changes, especially we're all doing more with less and trying to keep in mind the state's economic goals as well? It's a big order.
It is. Well, you know, the knee-jerk reaction would be, let's form a committee to discuss it. But you know, all kidding aside, you know, I think universities do have to adapt to the changing environment. You mentioned a lot of very important drivers, from technology to the economy, that are sort of changing, and the demographics as well, that are necessitating this change. And so, I mean, you do see it if you look around. If you visit the universities across the state here at UCF, how technology is being used to sort of maximize the limited resources that are available. You know, universities may not be the most nimble of institutions in the economy, but they do have to respond to
and you're seeing those
what's
adaptations.
happening. We're seeing it.
Well, let me ask you, Governor Scott issued a challenge to Florida schools recently to offer degrees for $10,000. For companies that are outside the state, possibly looking to bring business here, is that a perception that we're streamlining costs and being efficient, or might it be perceived that we're putting cost over value?
Well, yes. You know, I think there is the danger that it sort of looks gimmicky and maybe sends a signal that we don't value education, we don't value having a dynamic and educated workforce, which I think is very critical to business. I think that's a very powerful pheromone to attract businesses to a state or to a region. You know, what is the workforce like there? Do they have the skills? Are they adapting those skills? Are they adding to them? You know, is there the infrastructure to allow workers to do this? And you know, if you starve it for funding and you try to do something on the cheap, I mean, it's one thing to be a cheap date, but you can also get a date because you're fun to be with, you're a good conversationalist. And I think I'd rather fall into the second category as far as trying to attract suitors in the form of businesses locating in our state.
As costs for students have grown, so has enrollment in Florida's 28 state and community colleges. Let's see how these schools are providing education in technical fields while also setting up students to earn four-year degrees.
Many of the students that come to Daytona State would not have received their degree had they have gone to or had to have gone to another institution.
I'm a return to school mom. I haven't been in school in 27 years. I feel that being here is a little less stressful and more convenient for me.
It's not as expensive, you know, so you don't have to worry about taking out a bunch of loans.
I don't have to leave my family and go to another area.
What I want is some pain medication for my foot.
We will get that for you.
Well, I think the simulation provides student a learning environment where it's non-threatening.
This is Mr. Everett. He is our patient. He's our clinical patient. We do a lot of assessment. He is very realistic.
No, I didn't know it would be this detailed and this real life as far as the breathing and microphones so they can talk back to you.
And it really gives us an advantage to a lot of the other schools who don't have that, because we're able to come in and assess and know instantly if we're right or wrong. And
we really try to ensure that students are confident before they go into the clinical area.
I'm hoping to get all the experience I need so that when I graduate, not only can I pass the NCLEX, but that I can also go on into my field and be successful and, you know, be ahead of, you know, the rest of the nurses that's graduating in the area or the state.
Yeah, 20 or 25 years ago, in this county, you could have completed an associate degree, and you would have had to probably go at least to another county, a couple of counties away, to complete your baccalaureate, to complete your master's, your doctorate.
Don't worry, you're in very competent hands, I promise you.
I feel that it's been of great benefit to my education. I'm really excited about it.
Sean, Florida ranks 4th in the nation for community college enrollment. How critical are those schools for the local industries and for the higher ed model that we have with the state?
Well, I think they're an essential part. You know, we talked about labor force, having a dynamic and an educated labor force. That doesn't stop with universities. I mean, this has to be K through 12. It has to be our community college systems, trade schools. You know, there's a lot of other skills that can be delivered by other institutions that are better at it, quite frankly, than the university system. So I think that is essential. I gave a talk in Clemson recently in South Carolina, and they've got a very active community college, technical college system there that is very responsive to business needs in the region, and as a result they've got a very vibrant manufacturing sector there. And BMW is an example of a company that just located a plant there, and one of the reasons I was told by the economic development folks there was, you know, that the educational system was delivering. They were providing the employees that had the skills that BMW needed specifically, and I think community colleges can be more nimble in that regard. They can sort of be quicker on their feet, coming up with programs that are more responsive.
I was reading an article about that, the case studies from that area, and how important that is for bringing in the industry. So hopefully we'll be putting more of that together here in Florida.
I think so. I mean, and it's something that you really need to develop, and it's an investment. You know, it's an investment that pays dividends. So, you know, going back to the old $10,000 degree, you know, cheap is not always the best objective. Yes, you need to be accountable for resources. You need to be efficient. But, you know, I don't see things in the university system here that, to me, smack of bureaucracy that you see perhaps in universities in other parts of the country. I mean, it seems to me, especially here at UCF, the administrative levels almost electroplated on. I mean, it's very thin, and so we've been able to, I think, do a lot with not as much, not the same number of resources that other universities would take.
If we want a knowledge-based economy, how much then should the four-year degree be based on as an investment and not as an expenditure?
Well, that's a good point. And what's happened, and we'll go back to your early point about the convergence of economics and technology and demographics. I mean, we are 3.5+ years into an economic recovery that has been characterized by a particularly weak rebound in the labor market. And so, you know, you've got all these students that are coming out, they're graduating from programs, they have degrees, they may have, you know, accumulated debt to pay for their degrees, and there aren't jobs. And so suddenly, you know, the anger about that, I think it's turned, you know, against the university, and it's the debt. It's, you know, went to school, I studied, why don't I have a job? Well,
the American dream, right?
The American dream, and it's been deferred. I mean, quite frankly, for a lot of people, you know, retirements have been deferred. I mean, this is a once-in-a-lifetime crisis and recession, and it changed things. But education, you do need to look at as an investment. It's not, you know, an expenditure, a one-time purchase. This pays dividends over your lifetime, and time again, if you look at data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics or other reports, if you look at the lifetime profile as you move up the educational attainment ladder, the difference in terms of what you make over the course of your lifetime is a multiple
right?
of what you're paying for that education.
Well, what about faculty here? With the cuts that we've had, are we at a competitive disadvantage for other states in retaining or attracting faculty to stay with the universities in Florida?
I think it's a challenge, because when you're in the budgetary environment that we've been in for, you know, seemingly the past 5 or 6 years, forever.
Seems a long time.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got a star faculty member that's made a name for his or herself, and, you know, other universities take notice. They can come in and cherry pick. You know, the salary structure and the available resources to sort of make a counteroffer oftentimes aren't there. Just like business. But so I've seen across the university the loss of some very good faculty members to just that situation.
For the first time, Florida students are paying more for their education than the state pays. Take a look at what some of Florida's best and brightest had to say about why they chose higher education.
The knowledge is what the field relies on, and without the knowledge, I wouldn't be able to perform the job.
Certain jobs out in the market require a college degree, so I think if you're planning on going to those jobs oriented with the degree requirements, then, you know, it's needed.
I think that now we live in a much more entrepreneurial type of society, where if you have the skill and you can just teach yourself to do something, then you can just achieve whatever it is that you need to get.
I'm not sure whether or not it is really that necessary anymore to have a college degree. I mean, a lot of times right now it just seems like it's based on your connections or who you know.
I believe it's worth it, because at the end of the day, yeah, I may be broke, I may be in bankruptcy, but if I send out a job application with a college degree, they're going to look at me like, yeah, he may be broke, but yes, he has the potential to actually work at this job.
And there's more need for technology and more need for higher degrees, and if you don't go into higher education, then you're going to suffer.
Right now, at this stage, I will still go on and, you know, complete my college degree regardless of how much the tuition increases. But if this was the price that they were offering when I was a freshman, I'm not sure if I would have went through with it.
The tuition rates, because they're increasing, is making it more difficult for me.
Well, coming out to a university, the benefits of higher education would be just creating more open-minded individuals, and also this is really a place where you can think.
Sean, the formula for college costs has changed rapidly and very drastically over the last few years. We used to have 75% paid by the state, 25% by the student. Right now we are 40% state, 60% responsibility of the student. What's the cause, Sean, and what's the effect?
I think the cause are budgetary problems. Again, back to the role of the economy in this downturn and how it's impacted, you know, virtually everything, including funding for higher education. So there's been this shift. I mean, the states have not had the resources to...
And that's nationally.
It's nationally. They don't have the resources to support the university system as they've had in the past, and so cuts have come, and cuts have, you know, visited other programs as well. And I think this austerity is not something that's likely to go away in the near future, and so the burden shifts. Less money from the state, the money's got to come from somewhere, and so you see tuitions being pushed up. And I think the public at large doesn't really understand the model for higher education funding. They just see tuition going up, and parents see how much more they have to pay and what's it going to take to send my kids to school, and it's kind of mind-boggling.
It's a worry.
It's worry. And so, yeah, the burdens had to shift, and it's just, you know, there's a direct correlation between cuts in public support and tuition hikes.
Students are being encouraged to pursue STEM degrees. If we are successful in producing more STEM graduates, do we have the jobs here in Florida to absorb them, or are we going to see them leaving for other places?
Well, it's a possibility. I mean, I think in Central Florida, certainly with the end of the shuttle program, you know, we've seen a lot of jobs that would take graduates in those areas go away. So the question is, if you teach them, they will come. If we have all these graduates sort of sitting around somewhere in a bullpen, will the companies come and we can just call for a lefty? Right. Yeah. Well, you need a workforce, but they also have to have jobs. So it's a catch-22. So while it's important, and I think having a workforce that can support that, but you've also got to make sure that there are jobs, because you're going to get in a situation like we've seen so many students where they invest money, they borrow money, they go through college or university, they get a degree, but there's not a job. So it is a little bit of a chicken and an egg problem. I think these are important areas, and there's good spin-offs. But the obsession with it and sort of focusing only on that, yes, we need people in these fields, but I think we need some dreamers too. And I think there are other disciplines throughout a university whose graduates make significant contributions to our economy and our society when they get out.
Universities' partnerships with industry and with governments can be very lucrative for communities. A good example has been the UCF-UF partnership with Medical City and Lake Nona. How key are universities to these kind of partnerships?
Well, they wouldn't exist. I mean, if someone
without the university,
without the universities, I don't think we'd see the Medical City come to fruition. And so the university is a critical partner, but you also mentioned the private sector is involved, as is government. And so now you've got a situation where all these sectors are dealing with limited resources. Let's pull them together, leverage each of our resources, and still come up with something that's going to provide a bang for the economy. And we're just starting to see, I think, the economic benefits of Medical City come to fruition. I mean, I think it's fundamentally going to change that region of our economy, and a very important step towards diversifying our economy.
Aren't they saying by 2018 we'll have $8 billion, I believe, coming from that partnership? So that's part of the adaptations of making the partnerships with universities and businesses and pooling resources?
I think it is, and like evolution, not every species evolves in a way that they survive, and so I think we're pretty good at it in this region.
I hope
if you
so.
look at it, well, I think the proof's in the pudding, but if you look at other places, universities are not as engaged the way UCF is. But when they do, you can get very powerful results. I mean, there's no question. If you look at Silicon Valley, if you look at Research Triangle, if you look at our own Research Park, these are major success stories where you've got the interaction of university and private and public sectors delivering for the economy, providing jobs, providing an economic impact, providing revenue to governments that are strapped.
Sean, there's always been controversy that a business model is not the right fit for an educational institution. With the economy, the traditional business model doesn't fit the business community any longer. So where do university systems go from here?
Well, I think they evolve, as we said. Changes are already being made, and adaptations are happening to deal with the new reality of funding. I mean, a business maximizes profits, and they maximize profits. The flip side of that is they're minimizing costs. So if you can find a way to do something cheaper, better, faster, then you can succeed.
And survive.
And survive as a business. The same model doesn't quite fit for the university, because what we're producing isn't as clear-cut as a transistor or a circuit board that may be outsourced to China, and thereby helping a company profit in doing so. So it's dangerous to try to transition the private sector to something like a university, because there's externalities, there are positive benefits to the community at large that are not contained directly between the buyer and the seller.
It's much more complex.
It's much more complex, and so it's difficult to price, and so it doesn't fit exactly. And back to the notion of the $10,000 degree, I think it's a way to acknowledge increases in tuition and the stress it puts on families and students, but trying to minimize the cost of something is a lot different when you're talking about manufacturing a widget than it is when you're talking about the output of a university.
Sean, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
I've been talking about Florida's higher education landscape with economist Sean Snaith. Thank you for tuning in to Metro Center Outlook. Until next time, I'm Diane Trees.
This program was made possible by funding from the UCF Metro Center, where government leaders, business executives, and academic experts come together to discuss major issues facing the state of Florida.